Hello. If there's one thing I want you to grasp from this talk to you today, is this. Is that anybody who believes in Jesus, whether they be a Jewish believer in Jesus, a Protestant, a Messianic Jew who believes in Jesus, an evangelical Christian, a Baptist, a Methodist, a Pentecostal, Church of England, Church of Scotland, if they're a Catholic, what all these people have in common in their belief in Jesus is that they all of them worship Jesus, right? They all worship Jesus. Now, the God of Israel has said to the Jewish people, it's something we've all learned at Cheder, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Now, God could have just said to the Jewish people, I am the Lord your God, and that you might say, well, that's good enough. I am the Lord your God, but he hasn't said that. He's actually said, I am the Lord your God, and he's describing himself. I am one. 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 There's just one of me. Right? Now, why has God told us that he's one? There must got to be a reason, because he's not going to waste words like we do. There's a reason. I want to suggest to you it might be that he told himself he's one because he anticipated that there would be a time in the future when there would be a belief that would start off as a sect and grow and become worldwide, that believed that a man was God and they worshipped this man. You have to get this, that believing in Jesus, any Jew that you meet, anybody who you meet who believes in Jesus will worship him. And this is, in fact, idolatry. It is the golden calf. Jesus is the golden calf. Now, it might be, like many Jewish people, you say, well, why shouldn't we have a discussion about Jesus? Maybe he is the Messiah, because this is what Jews for Jesus and all these Christian missionaries groups are doing. And it might seem reasonable on the face of it. You're saying, well, why not? He could be. Maybe Jesus is the Messiah. Perhaps the rabbis have got it wrong. Perhaps, we should keep more of an open mind, because we Jews love to discuss and we love to debate and we like to keep an open mind and discuss and things. And, maybe they're right. Maybe this Jewish Jesus could be the Messiah. But I want to show you today, quite simply and quite clearly, that he isn't. And that he has actually discounted himself from being the Mashiach by the statements he has made. You don't need a lot of biblical knowledge to work this out. You don't even need to be a rabbi, right? This is common sense that for all of you to grasp. Jesus says, this is the belief, I am the way, the truth, the life, and no one comes to the Father, that he means God, but by me. Listen again. I am the way, the truth, the life, and no one gets to the Father, gets to God, but through me. Now, Jesus is not meek and mild and humble. No, I don't know where that's come from. Because if you look at the statements he's made like that, this is one arrogant fellow. This is a fellow that is saying to the Jewish people there at that time, if you want access to God, you've got to come through me. Another statement he made, I and the Father are one. Jesus is all about Jesus. Everything in the Gospels, the accounts, the narrative is I am this, I am that. This is one guy who's full of himself. If you look at the character of Jesus, if you look at the things that he says, like you would when you were at school and you're looking at literature and you're looking at characters and how they present and how you weigh them up, what comes across to me very clearly from the narrative is this: Jesus is really full of himself. This is a man who is saying he can forgive sins. This is a man who believes he's equal with God. He is God, and yet he's also the Son of God. Christianity believes that Jesus is God in the flesh, but that he is also the Son of God and inferior to God. Very, very slightly. Right? So the theology is very mixed up. So they believe he's divine. That means they believe he's God in the flesh. Now I want you to think about the nativity story. And I'm going to speak very plainly and very bluntly about it, because you have got to grasp the significance of this story and what it means, and how actually blasphemous it is, and how shocking it is for the Jewish people who believe in one God. The story is, you've got a Jewish woman, Mary. She's engaged to Joseph. She's a nice Jewish girl. She's a religious Jewish girl. The God of Israel apparently wants her to reproduce his son. He wants Mary to give birth to his son, the Son of God. So she's got to be a respectable Jewish girl. He's not going to choose a Jewish girl who plays around, who's not religious. He wants a mother that's going to send this Son of God, this divine baby, he wants him to go to shul. She's going to take him to shul. He's going to have a bar mitzvah. He's going to go to Cheder. So he's going to choose a blameless Jewish woman, a religious Jewish woman who's engaged to Joseph, who's again very frum. He's very religious. He wants to do everything the right thing, observing Torah. So this God of Israel has to make Mary pregnant with himself. Right? Because they believe, Jews for Jesus, Christians, Protestants, Catholics, they believe that Jesus is divine, that he's God. Right? So, right, let's get to Mary. Mary will have, by the time she has got engaged to Joseph, will be menstruating. She will have not been given in marriage until she's menstruating, because in according obviously with Jewish tradition, she would need to be able to produce children. Now girls can start menstruating anytime between the 11 and 16 at the maximum. So she would have been betrothed to Joseph when she was menstruating. That means that Miriam, was producing eggs. Now, in order to have a baby, that egg has to be fertilized, and it can only be fertilized by male sperm. It can't be fertilized by anything from a dog, a cat, a cow, nothing. It has to be fertilized from sperm. So the sperm is hitting the egg. There's the egg. The sperm has to get through. It's floating around. It's got to hit and fertilize that egg. Now, the belief is that when that egg has been fertilized in Mary, that embryo is God. Right? So that means the sperm that is fertilizing the egg is God's sperm. The Christian belief is that the sperm that has fertilized Mary's egg comes from the God of Israel. So they're actually sexualizing God. They are saying that the God of Israel produces sperm because he's got to produce a sperm, because if it's fertilizing Mary's egg, it's got to be from the God of Israel if it's going to be God. It's supposed to be divine. this being that's been created here is divine. It has a human body, right, the embryo, Mary's egg, but this has come from the God of Israel. This is God ejaculating somehow in Mary, and the sperm has hit the egg of Mary, and she's become pregnant, and that embryo is actually God. And she gives birth. It is a human being, it's got flesh and blood, but it is actually God in the flesh. Now, this is the Christian belief, and this is the belief of Messianic Jews. It's the belief of Jews for Jesus. It's the belief of Jewish believers in Jesus. This is what they believe, and this is what you've got to take on board. The way I'm explaining to you, nobody else is going to explain it so directly as what I've explained it to you. You have to get this. This is the belief. This is the belief. Now, remember the 3 wise men that came to visit baby Jesus? Why did they come to visit baby Jesus? Why? Well, the gospel says they came to worship Jesus. They came to worship the baby. Now, who's ever heard of such a thing in Judaism? Ever? Have you ever heard of anybody worshipping a baby? We have circumcision, we have Brit. It's a great occasion. But people don't go to circumcisions, they don't go to the Brit in order to worship the baby boy. Nobody goes to a Brit or circumcision to attend, to worship the baby. They go along, how's the baby? Is the baby sleeping? We bring a little present. How is he? He's a lovely boy, he looks like you and all that. We don't worship babies. We don't worship human beings. We only worship God. Because this is what God has commanded the Jewish people. You shall have no other gods before me. Nobody else. Nobody else. And Christians, Catholics, Messianic Jews worship this Jesus. You have to understand that there has never been a time, there's never been a thought, an idea at any time in any Jewish discussion over the centuries, and we have perhaps all sorts of ideas. We love to think round the box. There has never been a thought, a concept and an idea that the Mashiach would be God in the flesh. That a woman, a human woman that God has created, Mary, would become pregnant by the God of Israel through his sperm, fertilizing her egg and producing a baby that is God in the flesh, and that people would worship this baby. There has never been a concept, an idea of this. There just hasn't, it's never existed. And you know why it's never existed? It's because the Jewish people and all the rabbis know that the only person who is to be worshipped and praised is God. And God does not take flesh as a baby, and we worship this baby. And the baby grows up, and we worship the child, and then we worship the adult. Right? There has never ever been, in all the wild and fantastical ideas you could have about the Mashiach, any idea that this Mashiach would die, that the Jewish people would be required to put their faith in his blood that was shed on a cross outside the temple, that they would put their faith in this blood of a human being who they believe is God, and that they would have forgiveness of sins, eternal life and resurrection. There has never been that idea, ever, ever. You research it, you won't find it. You will not find any thought or idea of any rabbi who's ever looked at any of the Jewish scriptures in any study and debate, and all the fantastical thoughts of, you know what we like, we can think of everything, but we've not thought of that. We've not come up with that. You know, also have to realise that the Christianity, Messianic Jews, Jews for Jesus, believe with 100% certainty that the Jewish people are spiritually blind, that we can't understand our own scriptures. They actually believe that. The evangelicals, the Jews for Jesus, all these missionaries, all these people that love Israel, all these people that claim to love the Jews, believes that all the Jewish people are spiritually blind. They look at the Hebrew scriptures and they can't understand them. Where's this belief come from? I'll tell you where it's come from. It's come from St. Paul, because St. Paul was a Jew who knew right at the beginning that Jesus could not be the Messiah and that he was speaking blasphemy. When St. Paul heard all these things about I am the way, the truth, the life, and no one comes to the Father, the God, but through me, he knew this guy was arrogant. This guy thought he was God. This guy thought he's like divine. And St. Paul realised, as a Pharisee, as an Orthodox Jew, that he was speaking blasphemy. That's why he wanted to kill all the followers of Jesus, because he realised this was leading the Jewish people astray. This was leading the Jewish people into idolatry. That's why he wanted them dead, and that's why he killed them. Now, St. Paul had a spiritual experience. He believes he's met Jesus on a road when he was on a journey. Jesus spoke to him. He said this, Jesus said that. Instead of going to see a rabbi and talking about it, what's happened to me? I don't know what's happening to me. He doesn't. He believes it. He believes it. The rabbis might well have said to St. Paul, look, this is Meshuggah, this is crazy. You've obviously, something's happened to you, but this doesn't mean what you think it means. But St. Paul is again very, very arrogant. He is an arrogant character. St. Paul thinks if you don't agree with him, if the rabbis don't agree with him, then you're spiritually blind, right? He believed this spiritual experience. He believed he met Jesus. So what does St. Paul do? He goes back to the Hebrew scriptures and he distorts them. He distorts them to a theology, an idea that fulfills, that meets up with his spiritual experience. He believes his spiritual experience. He believes he's met Jesus. He believes he's the Messiah. He believes it all from this spiritual experience. So the basis of St. Paul's faith in Jesus comes not from the scripture. It comes from a spiritual experience, and that is the same for so many people. They're having spiritual experiences, weird things, and because they have this spiritual experience, they believe it. And what St. Paul did was distort all of the Hebrew scriptures to his way of thinking to try and explain this spiritual experience. And he's written it down. And the non-Jews and some Jews believe it. Christians, all evangelical Christians, the fired up Christians, the Jews for Jesus, the Jewish believers in Jesus, they all believe that these words of St. Paul come from God. They believe these are the words of God. They believe the Jewish people are spiritually blind. Now let me tell you this. Throughout the centuries, all the rabbis and all Christian Jewish scholars have all agreed, surprisingly, that in the Jewish scriptures, the Tanakh, there are between 12 and 15 what are called Messianic prophecies. So there's 15 scriptures at the maximum that are supposed to be concerned with the Messiah. So they all agree on that, 12 to 15. That is rabbis all through the ages and all these theologians, right? Now, when Jews for Jesus started over 40 years ago, about 42 years ago, the number rapidly increased to 100. And now I gather, 42 years later since the growth of this movement of Jews for Jesus, there are now apparently 300 prophecies in the Hebrew scriptures that are supposed to pertain to the Messiah. I was a Jewish believer in Jesus for 42 years. I couldn't find 300 prophecies in the Hebrew scriptures that could pertain to be related to the Messiah. I realised myself in the 1990s, this Messianic Judaism is mashuggy, it's crazy. Even I realised, and I believed in Jesus for 42 years. But I was brainwashed by Christianity and by all those Jews that believed in Jesus. Because all those people that are committed to evangelising the Jewish people believe that all rabbis are spiritually blind. They believe that there's a conspiracy by all rabbis to not reveal that Jesus is the Messiah to the Jewish people. So this is all about the Jewish conspiracy. They believe that all the rabbis are against Jesus, that they're hiding Jesus, that they know he's the Messiah, that they're deliberately hiding him from the Jewish people, that they're in conspiracy against him. They believe the Jewish laws given to the Jewish people are a curse, because that is the opinion of St. Paul. St. Paul believes Torah, all the commandments of God to the Jewish people are a curse. He considers it a waste of time to obey the Jewish people, to obey the commandments of God. Christianity believes that there is no way any person can do anything to please God. Christianity believes that all people are foul, disgusting, filthy, excrement-covered sinners. They believe that all people are foul and disgusting, and there is nothing any human being can do to please God. They take the Hebrew scriptures and distort everything. They distort everything. They take everything out of context. They completely distort everything. The Christian believes, the evangelical Christian believes that the Jewish people are spiritually blind, that we cannot even understand our own scriptures, and that they, the non-Jew, understand the Jewish scriptures perfectly. They believe they're on a mission, the evangelicals and Jewish believers in Jesus and Jews for Jesus. They believe that all the Jewish people are spiritually blind, that they cannot see the Messiah in scriptures, that we don't understand anything, and that we need to be saved, right? This is why Christians and Jewish believers, and I used to do it, pray for Jewish souls. They're praying that God will lift the veil from the Jewish mind, so when they look at scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, they can see Jesus. This is what they believe. St. Paul believed that God has placed a veil over the minds of Jewish people so that they cannot recognize Jesus, the Messiah, from the Hebrew scriptures. This has all come from St. Paul, because St. Paul was saying to the rabbis, you're wrong and I'm right. You're wrong and I'm right. I know I'm right. This is arrogant St. Paul. And the non-Jews believe St. Paul. And some Jews believe St. Paul. They believe that the Jewish people are all spiritually blind, that God has blinded them. And it's up to the church to pray to God to remove the veil, lift it up, and then Jewish people look at scriptures in the Hebrew Bible and say, oh, that's Jesus, that's Jesus, that's Jesus. I'll tell you one thing about veils. People say you can't see through a veil, but that's rubbish. Where I live, there's lots of Orthodox Muslim ladies who wear the veil, and I can tell you they know the difference between a potato and a lime. They know the difference between a lime and a lemon when they're shopping in the supermarket. Just because they wear the veil doesn't mean they can't see. They can see. When a bride walks down the aisle, she wears a veil, but she can see. She can see. She's not blind. So this metaphor of the veil is very silly anyway. Now, even without a comprehensive knowledge of the Hebrew Scriptures, it is blatantly obvious that Jesus is not the Messiah, and he himself discounts himself from being the Messiah because of the very things he says. By equating himself with God, by saying he's one with God, by saying you have to believe in him to have access to God, by saying he forgives sins, by everything he says, he discounts himself from being the Messiah, because there has never ever been a concept that the Messiah would be a sin bearer, that he would die and that his blood would be an atonement. Do you know that human sacrifice has been forbidden by the God of Israel? The God of Israel has said to the Jewish people, in our scriptures, do not sacrifice your daughters to the gods, because that is what people around Israel were doing. People were trying to please God by sacrificing the daughters. And the God of Israel has said to the Jewish people, have nothing to do with human sacrifice. Now, Jesus was a human being, he lived. Right, this was a human being, and he died by crucifixion. The blood that was shed, that he shed, was human blood. Now, that is not acceptable to God. It's not acceptable to God. It's not acceptable to God. God, the God of Israel, does not accept the blood of a human being for sin. He doesn't accept the blood of a guinea pig. If somebody turned up at the temple and said, I've got a guinea pig, to the high priest, well, you can use the guinea pig instead of a lamb on Yom Kippur. I've got this guinea pig, I've got this horse, I've got this duck, I've got this goose. Why not use this instead? The high priest said, I can't use that, because the God of Israel has prescribed exactly what the atonement process should be. Everything in Torah is being prescribed by God. It is God who has described and prescribed exactly what the atonement process is, and only can be. And human sacrifice is not acceptable to God. The death of Jesus has no validity in Judaism. It doesn't mean anything. The fact that he died by crucifixion, like with the two robbers, doesn't mean anything. It can't atone for sin according to the Jewish faith. If you want to believe that, that's your business. You can believe it. Nobody can stop you believing it. Millions of Christians do believe it, right? They do believe it. But if the non-Jews want to believe that, that's their business. But as far as the Jewish people are concerned, that is not being prescribed by the God of Israel. It can't do it. Believing in the blood of a man who you think is God, who you think is divine, will not atone for your sins. It doesn't have any merit in Judaism. It's not being prescribed by God. You can believe it if you want to. That's your free choice. But this is idolatry. To believe and worship Jesus is no different to worshipping the Jewish people worshipping the golden calf. It's just been dressed up. Now, do you know that round about the time of when Jews for Jesus was set up over 40 years ago, there was a conference in Europe by the evangelical Christians, and particularly the Baptists, the American Baptists, and they're all saying, how can we get these bloody Jews to believe in Jesus? We've got to get these Jews to believe in Jesus. How are we going to do it? Right, and they came up with a brainwave. Very clever, like the ad man, like the advertising. I know, will emphasise the Jewish Jesus so much that we will convince people that you can believe in Jesus and it's all right because it's all Jewish. You've got Mark Rosen, who was known by his Hebrew name as Moshe Rosen, who was a convert to Christianity. Do you know that Moshe Rosen, the head of Jews of Jesus, who passed away a few years ago, was a Baptist ordained minister? He was a convert to Christianity, right? They got him on board because he's enthusiastic. He's an evangelical Christian. He's a Baptist minister and he wants to convert the Jews to Jesus. So what do you have? You've got Christianity covered in schmaltz. You've got Christianity with a yarmulke. You've got Christianity with Magen Davids everywhere. You've got Christianity with chopped liver and bagels. You've got Christianity with, let's light the Friday night candles. You've got little synagogues being set up, no crosses present, but they've got lots of Magen Davids. They've got the talus, they've got siddurs, they've got Jewish songs, they've got Jewish prayers. Everything's is Yiddish. You walk in, you think you're in shul. But what you don't realise is that these people are worshipping Jesus, a man they believe is God. They sing songs like Come Lord Jesus, Come Lord Yeshua, his Hebrew name, and take your place as we build a throne and worship you. Because that's what Jews who believe in Jesus do. They worship Jesus. That's what I used to do. They are lovely people. Jewish believers in Jesus are lovely people. They're sincere people, they're committed people, they're lovely people. They might go to shul, they might keep Shabbat. They might have the chopped liver, they're very earnest, they're very sincere. They believe in the one God of Israel, but they also believe that Jesus is divine, which means they believe he's God and they worship him. And there has never ever been a concept in all the mushuki things we can come up about the Messiah, if we're getting carried away with us. No rabbi has ever said that the Messiah would be divine. The Messiah would be God in the flesh. And this is what you need to grasp. This is what you need to grasp. It is not okay for a Jewish person to believe in Jesus. Do not allow yourself to think, oh, well, it doesn't matter, it's harmless, the nice people, and it doesn't matter. It actually does matter, because these people are worshipping an idol. And these people, if they're a member of your congregation in a shul, will have an influence, because it's their role and their commitment and desire to convert other Jews also to worship Jesus. So when Jews for Jesus are saying to the Jewish people what seems harmless on the face of it, look, why don't you consider that Jesus is the Messiah? He might be. Have nothing to do with it. Because this belief is a smokescreen. They're wanting you to look at Jesus as the Messiah. It's a smokescreen to get you into idolatry. Right? This is a clever way to get the Jewish people to worship a man who the Christians believe is God. This is a roundabout, crafty way to get Jewish people into idolatry. The most important thing, and what most Jews who believe in God have in common, whether you're whether you reform, whether you keep Shabbat, whether you don't, whether you eat pork, you don't eat pork, whatever, what all Jews have in common, whether you reform, whether you're Orthodox, whether you're very from, you're never from, whatever you are, we all believe Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, and the Lord is one. And we will worship nobody else but the God of Israel. Nobody else but the God of Israel. And so you must have nothing to do with Jews for Jesus. Do not entertain it. Do not discuss it. Walk away. Do not allow yourself to be enticed into discussions, because their theology is all perversion. They have taken the Hebrew scriptures and they perverted every single one of our scriptures. They are perverting our Hebrew Bible. And this is what is so shocking, and this is why I say you must have nothing to do with it. Don't get yourself embroiled in discussions and debates, because unless you have extensive knowledge of the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament inside out and back to front, you will find yourself totally confused and ensnared by their ideology. This is very, very dangerous. Now, we have within our world Jewish community rabbis who know, they know the Hebrew Bible, the Hebrew scriptures inside out to back to front, but they also know the New Testament inside out and back to front. They're very knowledgeable and very experienced, and these people are the only people that can debate with Jews for Jesus and earnest evangelical Christians. They're the only people, not you and not me, because they do your head in. You will be ensnared and you will find yourself led astray. You'll find yourself convinced. And it's very, very deceptive. I was deceived for 42 years. I was not open to listening to any rabbi, because Jews for Jesus, the whole Jewish believers in Jesus, tells you don't listen to the rabbis. They're anti-Jesus. They're anti-Jesus. They're against God. They're blind. They're spiritually blind. And so what I would say to you and advise to you as an ex-Jewish believer in Jesus, and I studied theology, have nothing to do with Jews for Jesus. Don't enter into any debate or discussion. Walk away. Walk away. Don't try and think I'm clever, I can outsmart these people with my knowledge of the Bible, because you can't. Only people like rabbis who have a thorough understanding of the Hebrew scriptures and the New Testament, who are knowledgeable and experienced, can debate with these people. Don't you go there. I'm telling you, I wouldn't go there. And I was quite knowledgeable. Don't even go there. You will find yourself ensnared. If you want to know anything about the Messiah, go to Jews for Judaism. We have in our world community a wonderful website, Jews for Judaism. We have rabbis, Rabbi Tovia Singer, Rabbi Stuart Federer. These are experts. For decades, they studied Christianity. They know the Hebrew scriptures. They know why and how Jewish people have been ensnared into Christianity, and they can explain things to you. And they have wonderful websites that are educational, informative, enlightening. And you want to know anything about the Messiah and ideas, this is the place to go to. Jews for Judaism. Here you will be educated by knowledgeable rabbis, right? Smart rabbis who know Christianity inside out as much as they do Judaism. You and I don't. And I would just appeal to you, don't get involved. Don't go to any meetings. Don't get into any discussion. Say you're not interested and walk away. Walk away. It is so important. Don't try and think you're clever and can outsmart them. Don't get into discussion. The age-old advice given to Jewish people of don't get into discussion is really, really important, because it will do your head in. Because every single scripture, they have perverted everything. And because they're such lovely people, so warm, kind, sincere, that will also ensnare you. Because they're so warm and kind and sincere. And I hope that you will think about everything I've said, because I'm ashamed and embarrassed that I believed and that I was ensnared by this belief. And I wouldn't want anybody to be an idolater, which was what I was doing. Because whatever our differences as Jews, whatever our arguments, we're all united with the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and we won't have any other gods but the God of Israel, and we won't worship anybody, least of all, and we're definitely not going to worship a man who thinks he's God and also the Son of God. We're just not going there. We're going to stay faithful to the God of Israel and be the example to the world that the God of Israel chose us for. He chose us to reveal to the world that God is one, that we have no other gods but the one God of Israel, that we do not worship the golden calf that is Jesus Christ. We won't go there. We stand firm. One God, nobody one God, we only worship one God.